I clapped. 200 people in that room clapped, and I clapped right along with them. Because that's what you do when your boss stands under a spotlight and calls your work the best idea of his career. My hands stung. I kept going. Up on the screen behind him was a campaign I'd built over 18 months. Every word of it, every number, every late night, and my name was nowhere on it. He had deleted the footer that morning. I know, because I'm the one who put it there in the first place. His name was Grant. Mine is Corinne. And for 9 years, I was the quiet one at a Chicago agency called Merrick Cole, the account manager who actually ran the accounts. I wrote the briefs. I built the decks. I knew our clients by their kids' names, their coffee orders, and the exact hour they started to panic before a launch. Grant knew how to walk into a room and make all of that sound like it had come to him in a dream. That morning, the dream got him a title with the word senior in it. It got me, a few days later, a gift card. My dad was an electrician, union man, 40 years, hands like tree bark. He taught me one thing that stuck harder than anything a classroom ever gave me. When you finish a job, he'd say, you sign your work. Not for the customer, for yourself, so you always know which of these walls you stood behind. So I put a quiet line at the bottom of every deck I ever made. Prepared by C. Doyle. Small gray letters, easy to miss. My initials on a beam nobody would think to look for. It felt like superstition. It turned out to be insurance. Grant had a tell, and once you saw it, you couldn't stop seeing it. In the hallway, it was always we. We should try this. We crushed it in there. We've got a great team. The second a client or a partner walked into the room, the we quietly turned into I. I've been thinking, I want to take you somewhere bold. I built this. For 3 years, I watched it happen and told myself it was just how confident men talk. I was wrong. It wasn't a nervous habit. It was a business model, and I was the supplier. The first time I caught it, it was small. A holiday promotion I'd cooked up for a grocery client. A little idea that made them a lot of money, and in the recap meeting, Grant called it, and I quote, what I landed on. I told myself I'd misheard. I hadn't. But the idea was small and the client was happy and I was 36 and grateful to have a seat at the table, so I swallowed it. That's the thing about men like Grant. They start with the small walls, the ones you'll let them have, and they learn exactly how much you'll let them take. The account that changed everything was Northbound, an outdoor gear company that had gotten comfortable and a little boring, and was quietly bleeding customers to younger brands. They came to us for a rescue. Grant took the first call, shook the hands, charmed the room, and then handed me the actual problem. The way you hand someone a knot you don't feel like untangling. That was fine by me. Untangling the knot is the part I've always loved. It's the part where nobody's watching, and the work is just you and the truth of the thing. I lived inside that brand for 1.5 years. I ran the workshops. I read the reviews nobody reads, the 1-star ones, until I understood something the client had missed about their own customers. People didn't want another glossy ad about summiting a peak they'd never climb. They wanted permission to go outside near their own house on a Tuesday in the 20 free minutes they actually had. The whole insight was sitting right there in the complaints, waiting for someone to be quiet enough to hear it. I built a platform on it and gave it a line. Out your door. The wild starts on your street. Everything grew from that seed. The media plan, the budget, the launch calendar, the voice. the way the photos would feel. I filled whiteboards until my hand cramped. I have pictures of those whiteboards, my handwriting climbing up the glass at 11 at night, because I photograph my work while it's still messy. My dad again, you document the rough end before you close the wall so there's proof of what's really inside it. Priya was Northbound's vice president of marketing, and she was half the reason it worked. Sharp, impatient, allergic to fluff, and awake at strange hours the same as me. So most of the real building happened between the two of us at 11 at night while the rest of the world slept. She'd send a note that just said this, but braver, and I'd know exactly what she meant. She knew the work was mine because she watched me make it, comma by comma, month by month. Grant she met maybe twice, both times in a nice restaurant, both times on the company card. Here's the part that mattered later, though I swear I wasn't thinking about it then. Every draft lived on the agency's shared drive, and every file kept its own quiet history. Who created it? Who opened it? Who changed a single word, and at what minute? Every idea I handed Grant, I handed in an email, because that was simply our process. So 8 months of my thinking sat time-stamped on a server, waiting like copper wire behind fresh drywall. I wasn't building a case. I was just doing the job the way I was raised to. It turned out, those were the same thing. The pitch was on a Thursday. I built the deck, 40 slides, and I rehearsed Grant through it twice the night before, because he got the strategy backwards both times. Then Thursday came, and I sat in the second row, while he stood up and told the client it was his vision. Not the team's, his. He said the word I so many times, I lost the count somewhere in the teens. Priya caught my eye once across the table, one eyebrow just barely up. I kept my face blank and my hands folded. You learn how. You learn it early, and you learn it well. They bought it. Of course they bought it. It was good. It was the best work I had ever done in my life. The room went warm and loud, and Grant stood in the middle of it, soaking up a heat that belonged to 1.5 years of my nights. Afterward, he clapped me on the shoulder in the hallway and said, "We killed it in there." We. In the hallway. Always, only, in the hallway. I said thanks. I went back to my desk. I started building the next thing, because that's who I am, and because I still believed the room would eventually be fair. For about a day, I even had proof it might be. Priya sent a note to our leadership thanking the team, and she named me in it. Said Corinne's strategy is the sharpest thing we've seen in a decade. I read it 4 times. Then I watched Grant forward it up the chain with a fresh line pasted on top. So proud of what my vision unlocked for this client. He didn't delete her words. He just stood in front of them, the way he stood in front of my slides, so that all anyone upstairs saw was him. That was the day I understood he wasn't careless. He was precise. 2 weeks later, they announced it at the company all hands. Grant Mercer promoted to senior vice president. Campaign of the year, they called it. His campaign. He stood under the light and thanked his gut and his willingness to bet big. And behind him ran my slides, with the footer wiped clean. That's the morning I found out he'd deleted it. Prepared by C. Doyle, gone. Just a blank gray strip where my name used to live. 200 people clapped, and God help me, so did I, because I didn't yet know what else to do with my hands. What did I get for the best work of my career? A gift card. $40 to a steakhouse, dropped on my desk in a little envelope with my name spelled wrong on the front. Corinne with 2 R's. 9 years in the same hallway, and the man couldn't spell the name he'd just built a promotion on. I kept that envelope. Not out of sentiment. Out of something colder and more useful than sentiment, though it would be months before I understood what. I told myself to let it go. Everyone kept handing me that phrase, let it go, as if the anger were a balloon and I was choosing to grip the string. Then I found out about the award. Grant had entered Out Your Door for a national Effie, the prize for campaigns that actually move the numbers. And ours had moved them. Foot traffic up. Online sales up 19% in 2 quarters. On the entry, under lead strategist, he'd typed exactly one name: Grant Mercer. In the long list of contributors underneath, where you're supposed to credit the people who did the work, there was no Doyle at all. He hadn't just taken the stage, he'd taken the record. A stage is a moment, and you can tell yourself a moment doesn't last. But an award entry is a document, filed and archived, a thing that outlives the applause and calmly informs the future about who mattered. He was writing me out of the history in ink and collecting a trophy for it. That was the one that finally moved something in me, from hurt to still. Not loud, still. The way a house goes quiet in the second right before the power comes back on. I went to Ellen, our managing partner, because I still believed the building was fair, if you asked it nicely, and brought your evidence in a calm voice. I laid it out plainly. She listened, folded her hands, and told me Grant was very invested in his people, and that the smart move for my career was to be a team player and let the recognition lift the whole group. Then she said the thing that ended it. She said maybe I wasn't quite client-facing enough for the next level, and that was the real reason my raise hadn't come through. Not client-facing enough. About the accounts I ran alone at midnight. For the clients who emailed me and never once emailed him. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time that night. And I'm not going to pretend I was cold and clever in that moment. I was $40 and a misspelled name and 18 months of my life. And I cried in a concrete garage, like exactly the cliche I'd sworn I would never be. The overhead light buzzed. A car alarm went off 2 levels down. I have never felt smaller in a building I'd given 9 years. Then I stopped, because crying doesn't sign anything. And I thought about my dad standing in a gutted house with a black marker, writing his initials on a beam that would be sealed inside a wall for 50 years, where no inspector and no owner would ever see it. He did it anyway, every single time. Because he knew, and the wall knew, and for him, that was enough. And I thought, the wall knows. The wall already knows. I just have to be willing, one day, to open it back up. I didn't walk out of that garage with a master plan. I want to be honest about that. Because the version of this story where I'm 3 moves ahead is a lie, and you'd smell it a mile off. What I did was much smaller and much quieter. I went home and I started saving things. Not to burn him down. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Just because some stubborn part of me refused to let the wall get closed up for good, with my work sealed inside it and another man's name painted on the outside. I made a folder. Nothing dramatic, just a folder on my own personal drive, on my own time, holding nothing that belonged to the agency and nothing that belonged to the client. Screenshots of my own sent email, the ones that showed the whole campaign leaving my outbox 8 months before the pitch. My own calendar, stacked with workshops Grant never once attended. And the version history of the master deck, which listed in plain type exactly who created it and who had only ever opened it to admire it. Me, 411 edits. Grant, 11 views, and not one single change. I didn't look at that folder like a weapon. I looked at it the way my father looked at a wall he'd wired clean and true, quietly certain, in no hurry at all, because a thing built right doesn't need you to raise your voice for it. I didn't know yet what any of it was for. If you're waiting for the part where I detonate it all in a boardroom, I'll tell you right now, that's not how this ends. And the ending is better than that. The best thing I did in this whole story is almost nothing at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, the phone rang. The call came in April. A woman named Alicia ran a smaller, hungrier shop across town called Fieldhouse. The kind of place that quietly took the accounts that mattered right out from under agencies like mine. She'd seen the northbound work everywhere, she said. She'd assumed Grant was behind it. Everyone had. Right up until she shared a drink with Priya at a conference. And Priya laughed and set the record straight. So I'm not calling about Grant, Alicia told me. I'm calling about the person Priya wouldn't stop talking about all night. I almost said no. 9 years is a deep groove, and you get afraid to climb out of it, even when it started cutting into your back. But before I answered anyone, I did the thing my father would have done before touching a live panel. I found out the rules. I paid an employment attorney for one afternoon of her time, my own money, because I wanted to understand the wiring before I put a hand anywhere near it. She read my contract and told me the truth without any decoration. I'd signed a non-solicitation clause. I could leave anytime I wanted. I could not take a single file, a single client list, a single phone number. And I could not ask even one client to follow me out the door. So what can I actually do? I asked her. Your job, she said, right up until the day you leave. And then, nothing at all. You don't take, you don't ask, you don't poach. You leave so clean there isn't a fingerprint left behind. But, she went on, and she smiled a little when she said it, no clause on this earth can stop a company from choosing its own agency. If a client decides on their own to follow you, in their own conference room, with you nowhere near the conversation, that's the client's right, and it's ironclad. Your job is to make sure the choice is theirs and only theirs. Do that, and the cleanest exit is also the sharpest one you could possibly make. I sat with that for a week. Then I called Alicia back and said yes. So that's exactly what I did. For 6 more weeks, I was the best account manager Merritt Cole ever had. I closed out my work. I wrote careful transition notes for accounts I'd carried for years, so no client would suffer for my leaving. I did not say one bad word about Grant, who spent those same weeks telling anyone within earshot about his award, his instinct, his bold and lonely bet. He even swung by my desk to ask if I'd polish the case study for the awards jury. I told him I was flattered, and I quietly never touched it. Build your own wall for once, I thought, and let's all see if it stands. The day I gave notice, Ellen looked genuinely startled, which told me everything I needed to know about how invisible I'd been to the people upstairs. I handed back the laptop. I deleted my own access before anyone in the tech group could do it for me, because I wanted no question, ever, in anyone's mind about what I might have carried out the door. The answer was nothing. I left with a cardboard box holding a dead desk plant, a chipped coffee mug, and a photo of my dad on a job site, and not one single page of anybody's business. I didn't call Priya. That was the hardest part, and easily the most important. She emailed me the week I left. Please tell me you're not really gone. And I wrote back, that I had loved every minute of working with her, that I honestly couldn't discuss anything about where I was going, and that I hoped our paths would cross again someday. Every word of it true, every word of it careful. I didn't ask her for a thing. I just signed off, shut the laptop, and trusted the work to remember, on its own, who had actually built it. Here's where it gets good, and here's where I did almost nothing at all, which is still the part I love most whenever I tell it. Everything that happened next, I'd set in motion months before, without knowing it, just by doing my job in writing and letting the record quietly keep itself. The award was the first domino, and I never laid a finger on it. Prizes like that don't just take the entrant's word for who did what. Before they'll certify a win, they verify the credits. And to do that, the client has to sign off on the entry, name by name and result by result. So one ordinary Tuesday, a validation form landed in Priya's inbox, asking her to confirm the record for Out Your Door. Lead strategist, Grant Mercer. And Priya, who had spent 18 months emailing the real strategist at 11 at night, did the most honest thing a person can do. She told the plain truth. She wrote back that the strategist of record on that campaign had been Corinne Doyle, that the platform and the line had come from me, that she could not, in good conscience, sign off on a credit list that didn't carry my name, and that she'd be glad to walk anyone through the 18 months of correspondence that proved it. She didn't do it to torch Grant. She barely thought about Grant. She did it because someone in an official capacity had finally asked her directly who did the work. And Priya was not built to lie to a direct question. The jury flagged the entry and sent Merrick Cole a very polite, very serious note, asking the agency to reconcile the discrepancy in its own records. And that is how Ellen, the same Ellen who told me I wasn't client-facing enough, ended up opening the master deck and staring at the one thing Grant never once imagined anyone would think to check. The version history. Created by C. Doyle 8 months before his big Thursday. 411 edits under my name, 11 views under his, and not a single change to a single word. The wall finally opened. The signature still on the beam, right where I'd left it. I heard the rest secondhand, from Theo, a young coordinator on my old team, a good kid Grant used to call the printer guy, because he'd never bothered to learn what Theo actually did. Theo said the meeting was short and very, very quiet. Nobody shouted, nobody had to. Grant sat in a glass conference room while a partner walked him line by line through a paper trail he had no way to argue with, because timestamps don't get flustered, and metadata doesn't care how beautifully you present in a room. The entry was corrected. His name came off the top of it. They didn't fire him. Companies almost never do the clean thing. It's expensive, and it looks bad in the moment. But a firm that had just handed a man senior vice president for a vision that turned out not to be his began, very slowly and very privately, to do the math. And the story moved through the industry the way these stories always move. Not in a press release, but in drinks and hallway asides and knowing little pauses. And the shine came off him, one conversation at a time. Meanwhile, the accounts came up for renewal, one by one, on their own calendars, in their own conference rooms, with me nowhere near a single one of them. I never made a call. I never sent a pitch. I never so much as hinted. I just did honest work at Fieldhouse and let the phones ring on their own schedule. Northbound was first. When their contract with Merrick Cole came to its natural end that fall, Priya and her team ran a completely normal agency review. the kind any company on Earth is entitled to run, and at the end of it, they chose the shop where their strategist had gone. That was their decision, made in their own room, exactly as my lawyer had described it back in the spring. I didn't ask. I didn't have to. Some things, once you've built them right, just know their own way home. 11 of the 14 accounts I used to quietly run followed over the next year, each on its own timeline, each for its own stated reasons. Every one of them a choice made by the people who did the buying, the people who had always known, no matter whose name was on the stage, exactly who'd done the building. Nobody stole a thing. No clause was broken. The work simply walked back to the person who'd signed it, the way water finds the low ground without anyone having to tell it where to go. Here's what happened next, because I know that's the part you really came for. It didn't land like a thunderclap. It arrived the way the truth usually does, quietly, on its own schedule, and then, all at once, the moment you finally look up. A year after I sat in that dark room, clapping with my name scrubbed off the screen, I made partner at Fieldhouse. Alicia put it in the plainest possible terms the morning she offered it. "You didn't bring us clients," she said. "The clients brought us you." My name is on the letterhead now. It's on the door. And it is on the small gray line at the bottom of every single deck that leaves my desk. Prepared by C. Doyle. I never delete it. Not once. Not ever. Some walls, it turns out, you sign twice, just to be sure. I brought Theo with me. It turned out the printer guy had a sharper eye for numbers than half the strategist I'd worked beside in 15 years. And last month he stood up and ran his very first pitch entirely on his own. I sat in the second row and watched him say, "I built this," about something he had genuinely, actually built. When it came time for the room to thank him, I clapped until my hands stung. That's the good kind of clapping. I'd honestly forgotten, somewhere in those 9 years, that there was a good kind. Priya and I still trade emails at 11 at night. Out Your Door is still running, still working, still hers, and still, quietly and permanently, a little bit mine. We have never once talked through how the whole thing happened. We don't need to. She put her name to the truth on a day when staying silent would have been so much easier. And I will spend the rest of my career remembering that one honest client is worth more than any title a man can hand himself under a spotlight. Last I heard, Grant is still at Merritt Cole. They gave him a group to run, which sounds impressive right up until you learn how few accounts are actually left inside it. The award went into the permanent record with the right name on it in the end, which means that somewhere in an official archive, there's now a document that states, in ink he can never scrub, exactly who did the work. He got to keep the title. I got to keep the work, the clients, the partnership, and my name. Do the math on that trade. I did. I came out ahead, and somewhere underneath all that confidence, I suspect he knows it too. My dad passed 2 winters ago. I keep his photo on my new desk, on a job site, squinting into the sun, a marker tucked behind one ear. I never got the chance to tell him how this whole thing ended, but I think, somehow, he already knew how it would. "You sign your work," he used to say, "so you always know which of these walls you stood behind." It took me 9 years and 1 stolen campaign to learn the second half of the lesson he never said out loud. Other people can read that signature too. Sometimes it just takes them a while to look. So let me ask you honestly, because I still turn it over on the quiet nights. Was leaving clean and letting the clients choose on their own the right way to handle it? Or should I have blown the whistle loud the second I saw my name wiped off that screen? Would you have kept the receipts and waited? Or walked into that all hands and said it out loud in front of everyone? Tell me below. And I'm curious who's out there listening tonight, so drop your state and your age while you're at it.